Quick, is a well-kept 3-bedroom house worth $310,000, or $340,000? Whatever number came to your mind first was not really a guess about the house. It was a guess pulled toward a number you had already been shown somewhere, without ever noticing that number was doing any work at all. Before we go any further, this video is for educational purposes only. It explores documented research on real estate pricing, judicial sentencing, and consumer auctions. It is not financial, legal, or investment advice. Always consult a qualified professional for your specific situation. Here is the starting point. Psychologists have a name for the mechanism behind that guess: anchoring and adjustment. The effect was first documented by Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman in a landmark 1974 study published in the journal Science. Their finding, in short, is that an arbitrary starting number, even one a person can plainly see as meaningless, pulls a later estimate toward it, and people adjust away from that starting point far less than they assume they do. That finding came out of a controlled laboratory task, a spinning wheel and a trivia question about a percentage nobody in the room actually knew. It is the kind of demonstration psychology channels return to often, and for good reason. But a rigged wheel and a guess about a percentage are a clean, contained version of something that plays out constantly with real professionals, real money, and real consequences that do not reset when the experiment ends. This episode is about 3 of those documented cases. A house price, a prison sentence, and a number pulled from a stranger's own social security card. Start with the house. In 1987, the researchers Gregory Northcraft and Margaret Neal published a study in the journal Organizational Behavior and Human Decision Processes, and they did something most anchoring research does not do. They left the laboratory. Their subjects, business students and licensed real estate agents from Tucson, Arizona, were sent to tour an actual house that was actually for sale, carrying a genuine 10-page packet of market data, recent neighborhood sales, comparable listings, square footage, the kind of information a real amateurs playing a game. As a group they averaged nearly 7 years of professional experience and about 13 real estate transactions a year. The one thing Northcraft and Neal changed was the listing price printed on the packet. The true appraised value of the house was $74,900. Depending on which packet a subject received, that same house was listed at $65,900, $71,900, $77,900, or $83,900, a range running from about 12% below its true value to about 12% above it. Every subject then estimated 4 separate things about the property: its appraised value, a fair advertised selling price, a reasonable price to pay as a buyer, and the lowest offer they would accept if they were the seller. All 4 estimates, for both the students and the licensed agents, moved with the listing price, and the shift was not trivial. Agents shown the low listing price put the appraised value of the house at an average of $67,811. Agents shown the high listing price, for the identical house, put it at an average of $75,190, a statistically significant gap. Here is the detail that turns this from an anchoring demonstration into something sharper. When the researchers later asked agents what had influenced their number, only 24% of the professional agents mentioned the listing price as a factor at all, compared with 56% of the amateur students. Just 14% of the agents ranked it among their top 3 considerations. These were the same agents whose estimates the data had just shown were tracking that listing price closely. The professionals were just as susceptible to the anchor as the amateurs. They were simply far less likely to notice, or to admit, that it had happened. Now take the anchor out of real estate and put it in a courtroom. In 2006, the psychologists Bert English, Thomas Musweiler, and Fritz Strack published a study in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin with a title that says exactly what it found: playing dice with criminal sentences. Their subjects were not students. They were actual German judges and prosecutors. Average, working through realistic case files built with the help of practicing trial judges specifically so the material would be indistinguishable from a real file. In the first study, participants read a rape case and were asked to imagine a journalist calling during a court recess to ask whether the sentence would end up higher or lower than either 1 year or 3 years. Nothing about a journalist's passing question should carry any legal weight at all. Legal professionals exposed to the higher figure recommended sentences averaging 33.4 months. Those exposed Same case, same evidence, an 8-month gap driven by a phone call the judges had been instructed to dismiss. The researchers then removed any pretense that the number might mean something. In a later study, legal professionals were told outright, in writing, that the prosecutor's sentencing demand had been generated at random. They still gave longer sentences when the random number was high. Then the researchers went one step further. They handed judges and junior lawyers a pair of loaded dice and had even a number participants had just produced with their own hand, and knew for a fact to be pure chance, pulled their sentencing decisions in its direction, an average of 7.8 months following a high roll against 5.3 months following a low one. Across every version of the study, years of legal training made no measurable difference to the size of this effect. It did make a difference to something else. Experienced legal professionals reported feeling considerably more certain about their sentencing decisions than less experienced participants did, even though both groups were swayed by the anchor to the same degree. Confidence, in other words, tracked experience. Accuracy did not. One more case, and this one does not involve a credentialed expert at all. In 2003, the economists Dan Ariely, George Lowenstein, and Dražen Prelec published a study in the Quarterly Journal of Economics called Coherent Arbitrariness. In one of their experiments, they gathered 55 MBA students and showed them 6 ordinary products: a cordless keyboard, a cordless trackball, 2 bottles of wine, Before anyone stated a price out loud, every student first wrote down the last 2 digits of their own social security number. They were then asked whether they would pay that exact number, in dollars, for each item, and only afterward asked to name their actual maximum willingness to pay. A real auction followed, using real money, with a genuine chance to walk away holding the product. Nobody in that room believed their social security number reflected the value of a cordless keyboard. The number is assigned at birth. Electronics, or chocolate. And yet, across every single product category, it mattered. Students whose 2 digits happened to fall in the top fifth of the group range priced these items, in the researchers' own words, typically greater by a factor of 3 than students whose digits fell in the bottom fifth. For the cordless keyboard specifically, the lowest group averaged a bid of $16.09. The highest group, same keyboard, same room, same afternoon, averaged $55.64. Put the 3 cases next to each other and the shape of the finding gets hard to unsee. A real estate agent with years of transactions behind her. A judge with a decade in the courtroom. A graduate student holding a genuinely meaningless 9-digit government number. None of them were guessing at random, and none of them were being careless. Each one was doing their honest best to produce an accurate number. And in every case, a figure that had nothing to do with the true value of the house, the true weight of the crime, or the true worth of the keyboard still moved the honest number they produced. A word on what this does and does not mean. It does not mean real estate valuations are fake, that judges are unfit to sentence anyone, or that every price you encounter is a trick built specifically to catch you. Markets still track real information most of the time, and expertise still matters for a great many other reasons. What these 3 studies show is narrower, and in some ways more unsettling. The anchoring effect does not require the anchor to be relevant, does not require it to be plausible, and does not require the person exposed to it to be naive or untrained. It survives contact with professional training, motivation to be accurate, and even full, explicit awareness that the number is meaningless. Here is the deeper point. We tend to describe our estimates as though they rise directly out of the thing itself. This is what the house is worth, this is what the crime deserves, this is what the keyboard is worth to me. What these studies suggest is that a meaningful share of that number was never really about the house, the crime, or the keyboard at all. It was about whatever figure happened to be sitting nearby in the seconds before you had to answer. The listing price typed onto a for sale sign. The number in a phone call you meant to dismiss. The last 2 digits of a card you carry for reasons that have nothing to do with keyboards, wine, or chocolate. So here is a question worth sitting with before you leave a comment. Think about the last time you were asked to name a price, a salary, or an offer, and someone else spoke first. Did their number change what you said next? I would like to know how large the gap turned out to be, and whether you noticed it happening in the moment, or only afterward. And in the next episode, we leave the number behind and look at the voice that says it out loud. A man in a suit, a confident tone on a financial broadcast, and a specific reason his certainty changes what you believe, even when part of you already knows he is trying to sell you something. That is the authority effect, and it works especially well on people who are certain they are immune to it.